So the next set of sheets in a subdivision set could be, and in this case, is the erosion and sediment control. Sometimes there's multiple phases because throughout the phases of construction, they have to put in different erosion control measures. And the purpose of this is to keep dirt and materials from leaving the site and sand and silt getting into existing waterways. So if we were to zoom in and take a look at these sheets here, first thing that you'll see, these big thick lines is basically what they're called drainage areas. So this area, if any rain fell within this area, just by the natural state of the ground, it's going to drain to this sediment trap. So this happens to be looks like a culvert crossing here, and they're putting in a sediment trap here to catch any of the runoff, and therefore all the sand and silt will settle before the water continues on downstream, and that keeps the sediment on site. You can see there's another one set up over here. They've got some stone outlet. So these structures might be something that are relatively small, maybe done with a small excavator or dozer or other smaller piece of equipment. Over here you can see this is part of a sediment basin, so this is something else that they would get created. This information here are basically going to be the storm sewer that is going to be put in, and you can see there's some numbers on here. Those numbers correlate to another sheet. I believe it's sheet 43, and what that'll do is, if we take a look here, you can see that the structure number correlates to a structure type, a length, a diameter, and pipe information. So on this sheet, which is further in the list, is the basically a schedule of all the storm utility information. So that's where you would find that. So I'm going to go back to sheet 7 here, and you can see there's some drainage areas. That's what these are, sediment basins. You can see it's all going into one, but this water here, if it fell, it's going to go into there. So the idea is to maintain the water on site. There's usually a legend. So over here, you can see I have a construction entrance. This is a silt fence, inlet protection, temporary sediment trap, and outlet protection. So again, this is something that would be put into the takeoff as well as in the construction phase. One thing I didn't mention earlier is there's usually a graphic scale, so you can see that 1 inch equals, in this case, this is a 50-foot sheet, so 1 inch on this sheet equals 50 feet. If we were to kind of scroll back and take a look, let's go to the next sheet. You can see that it's just another section of the sheet, same information. Here's a little bit more details on the sediment basin, contours depicting that. The contours are shown, but there's no real elevations. That's going to be shown on another sheet. We still have the silt fence. You can see the silt fence is along the property line. Over here is where those wetlands are. And if we go down to this next sheet, this again is that area. You can see this is where that cul-de-sac is going to be that we saw in the overall plan set. And there's some sediment traps. So this is basically phase 1. And as we continue down, you'll see that we get into phase 2. So during the next phase of the construction, where they're building the roads, you can see the construction entrance is going to be in these locations. You can see the CE. They're going to be putting in a berm. So this is some of the grading. So down here we've got the basin as well. So again, this is the measures that would be applied once they get to this phase of the construction, which is phase 2, and they're going to apply that information. Same thing here. You can see as they're getting into building the roads. So when they actually have the roads built, they're putting these inlet protections around all the structures so that as dirt and materials get moved around the site and the grading's happening on the lots, then that soil and stuff doesn't end up in the storm sewer. So they put these inlet protections around to protect that. So this phase 2 would actually be after the roads are in place. and maybe some of the site grading is happening. As we move on, you can see again, it's just the same information. It's just a different phase. You can see different portions of the data is being built. So what would happen is, in this particular case, when they're building models, a lot of times model builders will do a finished ground unless they're contracted to do an erosion control plan. And they may do multiple models. They may do one for the different phases of erosion, but also the final grade. So there might be actually 3 models that depict the type of construction happening here. In a subdivision, you might do the roads as one model. You might do the overall site as another. All depends on how they get built. Usually when third parties build it out, they build one finished ground model of everything. If we can get the contractors to understand how to build the models and teach them how to build it, they can build what they need when they need it. So if they're going to do the roads first, they can just build the subgrade model for the road, and then they can come back and do the lot grading at a later point, or do the pond and do that as a separate model. So a lot of different things that you can do, and having Business Center to be able to do this, create the stakeout data and or the models would be beneficial to the contractor. The next sheet here is typically along the erosion control is the sediment and notes. So there's a whole narrative that explains how this material and how the sequencing should happen. And again, we won't go through and read all those details, but then even here is their computation. So it's showing how they computed and what for the basin, it's important to make sure they've got the right volume. So therefore, they would have that information shown here is how they calculated it. So then we get into, again, some more details. So these are, not the general construction ones, but these are the erosion control ones. So how the silt fence gets put in, some other, summary tables, the inlet protection, construction entrance, how it's built. So there's details that show how all this should be done. The next sheet, again, some more notes, so more silt fences. This is usually, in this case, this is by the county. So this is their requirements, what they require. So sheets usually just inserted in. And then we get into the road and utility plans, and we'll talk about that next.